Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining our second hemp industry stakeholder meeting focusing on Idaho. My name is Christina Stecker-Gassi. I'm the Healthy Food and Farms Program Manager at the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides, referred to many as NCAP, and my colleagues Lacey and Laura are also here. And it's been excited to work on this project, not just for Idaho, but also regionally and connections across the country and even up into Canada. For everyone joining today, please introduce yourself in the chat with your name, location, and connection to hemp. While you're putting your name, location, and connection to hemp in the chat, I'll start by introducing NCAP and sharing a little background. Founded in the 1970s as a coalition of community-based groups working on healthier forest management in the West, the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides has grown to be the leading Northwest voice for non-toxic and least toxic weed solutions and pest solutions. We are working on issues related to water and wildlife, people and communities, and food and farms. Notably, NCAP has worked to advance culturally and least toxic alternatives to crop pests and diseases in organic blueberry production, potatoes, and it has done a variety of heirloom corn trials, and for the past 3 years has been researching hemp grower pest management needs and documenting organic production techniques in the arid Intermountain West. I'll have my colleague Laura drop links to 2 video case studies of organic hemp production from Eastern Oregon in the chat for anyone who may be interested. Although many of us are well aware of the history of hemp in America, I'll start with a brief overview just to get us started. Laws in the 1900s required farmers to grow hemp throughout the British colonies. Production was banned, though, throughout the United States or more or less banned in 1937 with the passage of the Marijuana Tax Act. And in 1970, the Controlled Substance Act listed marijuana as a Schedule I narcotic and made no distinction between marijuana and hemp, something I'm sure we're all very familiar with the implications of. For almost 28 years, the regulation of hemp and marijuana continued to fall with full force. And until 1998, which saw the introduction of some edible products, and funnily enough, that's also the same year that Canada legalized hemp production. Throughout this time, several tribal nations were also challenging the US ban, noting the industry potential, but it wasn't until the 2014 Farm Bill created a pilot program for hemp production, and the federal ban was lifted following the passage of the 2018 Farm Bill. As we all know, Idaho is one of the last state in the country to legalize hemp. And 2022 was our first season when hemp was legally grown under the state administered plan housed over at the Idaho State Department of Agriculture. The Nez Perce and Shoshone tribal governments also administer USDA approved industrial hemp programs. On this call today, we have licensed producers and handlers, as well as folks interested in becoming licensed. We also have program administrators, researchers, and other community leaders with a stake in the emerging industry. We are thankful for the Western Extension Risk Management Education Center out of the Washington State University for sponsoring our series. Whether you're interested in biomass production for fiber, seed, isolates, or something else, this will no doubt be a great learning opportunity for each of us. Learning and sharing. It takes time for a brand new crop to get a foothold into established industries like food manufacturing, paper, textiles, and other benefits such as diversification of agricultural systems, local sources for supply chains, and less reliance on fossil fuels. Today will be a down-to-earth and informal introduction to this series, or the second in the series, and we will take the time to meet each other and share how each of us are stakeholders in the hemp industry. Again, if you were late to join, please put your name, location, and connection to hemp in the chat. And I'll go ahead and just briefly introduce myself. I'm Christina Stucker-Cassie, and I'm a political agroecologist working at the intersection of political, social, and ecological systems, primarily focused on organic, sustainable, and regenerative food, fuel, and fiber production. I am the Healthy Food and Farms Program Manager for the Northwest Center for Alternatives to Pesticides. I'm based in Boise, Idaho, where my family used to operate a dairy and row crop operation. Several growers who weren't able to make it on the call today shared their insights from the year with me. So I'll be doing my best to weigh in on their behalf as well. This forum is a great opportunity to share your work, goals, challenges, and opportunities. And I'll be lightly facilitating, but expect the conversation to unfold quite organically with this group. We have a good amount of time, so I'll go ahead and kick off the conversation by asking the question, how did everyone's season go? And I know we have a variety of perspectives, so who wants to chime in?
I can start if you want, Christina.
That'd be great.
Sure. So I'm Jeff Koschik, and I'm the general manager of Verve Seed Solutions up in Canada. So we've got about 16 varieties on the list of approved cultivars up here in Canada, of which we export into the US also, and really around the world. I'm also a pedigreed seed grower for our company. So we farm about 8,000 acres I'm based out of Manitoba, all kinds of different crops, including hemp. So just as I'll start off kind of with a bit of the challenges with regards to the hemp industry in Canada, which has been higher commodity prices for our other commodities, in particular our cash crop canola. And also just about everything had some very strong prices available to farmers. So a lot of the processors in Canada was a little more difficult getting acres in. But that being said, we come off a year where I would say there was generally a drought throughout Western Canada, a drought situation where yields were down from previous years to a year where we had, maybe a pocket two or drought, but for the most part, moisture was okay. So for that reason alone, along with some good heat units, it was an above average year for hemp production in Canada. I would say yields are probably 10 to 15% higher. The majority of hemp grown in Canada, 80 to 90% is for food quality purposes or food grade purposes. So that's what's driving the industry. We now have more people, more processing involved in fiber. So that is taking hold, and whether it's for fiber only or dual purpose fiber and grain, or even dual purpose CBD and fiber or otherwise, those markets are starting to evolve a little bit more. So overall, I've been doing this when Christina said it was legalized in 1998. That's when I began working with hemp as a diversified applied agronomist, research agronomist in Manitoba. So we did a lot of the original, I guess, agronomy work with hemp. So yeah, been doing it a fair bit now, and very happy to see Idaho join the rest of the North America here in welcoming hemp to the program. So appreciate it, and looking forward to meeting everybody else. But that's kind of what I had to say. Thank
you, Jeff. It's great to have you on the call. And for anyone who's interested in following up with Jeff, I know he, within capacity, makes himself available as a consultant. So
I'll point out, I don't know if Jamie's put his name in there, but Jamie Hunter, he's the good-looking guy on the right-hand side there with a hemp leaf on his face. He also works for Verve Seed Solutions. He's located in Alberta, so a little bit closer. So we're like I said, we are spread out across the Western prairies here, but both of us are here to listen and learn and help out if we can.
And might I suggest that Pamela goes next, because she's both a grower and a researcher. If you're available, Pamela, I'm sure folks would love to hear how your season went.
This is Pamela Simpson. I'm in Julian's office. So I am a researcher with University of Idaho. I am the weed scientist, potato cropping systems, and we decided to do some hemp research here We didn't really have any fundings, but I wanted to see how it grew and what we needed to do here under irrigation, and see if we can work this crop into a potato rotation. So we grew an acre, and I did some herbicide tolerance work, which was interesting. We found herbicides that the hemp tolerated, so that was good. The interesting thing for us, though, and Chad Jackson, he's the operations manager here at the Research and Extension Center, and he's on this call. We had some interesting times with getting licensed and learning the whole process about having more than one lot, because we had a few plants up in a greenhouse in Moscow on campus. And so we had to have that inspected and go through the whole thing, even though it was just a few plants in an isolated greenhouse. The crop looked great. It grew like 12, 15 feet tall. Chad set up our solid set irrigation with riser extensions, which seemed to work out pretty well. It grew really fast, and I think it would be a good crop, but we had to crop destruct it because we're not selling it. We did not have it tested for THC levels or anything like that, but we chopped it, burned it, and then worked it into the ground. And I'll be looking at some of the root culms, I don't know what you would call them, to see how big they are and how much they've broken down, fall and in early spring, because that's probably going to be an issue with potato growers, commercial farmers, because when something like that comes over the line where they're making French fries, that causes a lot of problems. So I blathered on to Christina in a call a month or so ago, but that's our experience with growing hemp here. It did a really nice job, and we're going to try to get some money. We're going to try to get some money. Just a minute, my phone's. We're going to try to get some funding here this next year. We haven't gotten together yet. So anybody has ideas, we'd love to hear.
Thank you, Pam. And I wanted to follow up on the research funding, and especially in potatoes, because I'm pretty sure that was a focus of the RFP that OSU's Global Hemp Research Center put out and received from USDA for $15 million. The short midterm grant, so many years. And I reached out to a researcher working on grain and fiber in Hermiston, who I got connected to through Javendra, who's on the call, who's OSU's hemp extension agent. And I have the director's phone number and was encouraged to reach out to talk about what's happening in Idaho to see if there's any regional coordination. But I just wanted to verbalize that on the call in case anyone is already establishing communications with OSU. I'm going to continue to try, but it'd be good to know if anyone else is.
Okay. That's good. I'm actually going to try to coordinate with them on a quinoa project as well. So we'll see who all the people are and try to get that worked out. Thanks.
Nice. Yeah. It might be fun since I mentioned Javendra and also Marguerite, who are both extension agents in their respective states. And Idaho doesn't have a hemp extension agent. So it might be kind of fun to hear from their perspectives how their position aids their state's industry, especially in these relatively early years for all of us. I don't know which one of you want to go first, but it'd be great to hear from you.
I can go ahead since I have my camera on. I'm Marguerite Bolt. I'm the extension specialist at Purdue University, which is in Indiana. I've been in this position for 3 years, and I've been at Purdue working on hemp since 2017. But we focus heavily on outreach and education because, as many of you know, we don't have a lot of resources that are applicable to the United States. So I take the research that's going on in the US, but also past research in Canada and Europe, and communicate that with our growers. So we have quite a diverse group of growers in Indiana and the Midwest. We have grain, fiber, and cannabinoid production. And so we also have research projects that focus on variety trials for grain, fiber, and cannabinoid, entomology research, organic rotation projects. I have a student here with me that's working on one of the rotation projects. This is Josh Kraft. But yeah, we've had a pretty positive experience with extension and communicating with growers. So we've been received pretty positively by most people in the community. We've gotten to talk with some of our legislators, and we have overall pretty good support considering we're in Indiana, and we're kind of surrounded by a sea of cannabis states, and we are not a medical adult use cannabis state at this point. But our growers have had some serious struggles from crop destruction due to THC, which has gotten better each year. We have fewer and fewer growers that have to do a crop destruct, to serious weather issues. So we struggle with a lot of fungal and insect pressure in this part of the US, especially fungal diseases. So we're seeing a lot more like fusarium head blight in both grain and cannabinoid production. We're seeing other kinds of like molds and rots. I work with oomycete pathogens, which we see in, wet, humid years. And then, of course, we had a drought like pretty much everywhere else in North America. So we had growers who had some loss due to drought and had some phytotoxic responses to some of the organic herbicides that they were applying. So it's just a challenging year for us this year. But overall, the extension program is strong, and we have lots of students working on programs. Josh developed a consulting company. So he's working with some folks to bring education material in addition to the extension program, just general cannabis education. But, we're happy to collaborate and provide insight as needed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Govinda Shrestha, and I am a hemp extension specialist with Oregon State University. It looks like, Margaria, she's working a lot. It's been over a year. It's 15 months. I started this position as hemp extension specialist. And in my program as extension agents, I'm doing different kind of extension activity. One of the activity that I'm doing is OSU Hemp newsletter. So we publish from June to October. It's a monthly newsletter. On that newsletter, like entomologists, plant pathologists, agronomists, and global hemp itself. So they share the scientists share the research information, and then if any kind of updates going on with global hemp and other things, so we will have that on that newsletter. So I have over 600 subscribers for that newsletter, and it's been a 2 season that I conducted. And also my position is statewide. So but also I have some regional. So I do have some regional focus research and extension program. Because I'm in Southern Oregon, so it's more like a cannabinoid or hemp flower production system. So I'm kind of focusing my research and extension activity on that area. As an example, that I conduct a research in how that different planting methods like a direct seeding versus transplanting, how that impact. And another research that I did and I'm doing is that how the transplanting date influence. Another research would be can we grow the hemp on a dry land or not? It's kind of asking the basic research question about and that's kind of trial I'm doing. And mainly I'm focusing on yield and the THC, and these are the 2 things that I'm kind of looking on that kind of project. And by my training, I'm an entomologist, so I do lots of work on entomologists, pest monitoring and that kind of things. And considering as an insect pest, I think corn earworm seems to be one major insect pest because particularly flower, they attack the flower. And a disease, I think we do have also the fusarium head blight. That's one issue. But mainly, I think we have that beet colitis virus, that pathogen. That's a main issue. That's the kind of most threat to the hemp cropping systems. Yeah, these are the things. And Global Hemp is like, I'm the part of the Global Hemp Innovation Center, so that, Global Hemp has a different, research group, and I'm kind of more focused on agronomic research, and but there are like a chemistry, like a pharmaceutical, and there are so many consortia, and in OSU as an extension and research. So in summertime, what we do, like every month we have monthly check-in program. So if there is kind of pest issue, disease issue, and I lead that program, like, every month from May to October, we have monthly checking, like 20 minutes, have a, like, what's the pest issue, what are you doing, something like that. And then like in an extension agent, then that information can be go to the grassroots level. So that's what we are doing. And just to add to the Christina point about that potato grant, I think that's true that, Global Hemp Innovation Center received like a 50 million grant. It's a big grant. And I believe the Idaho is also part of that grant. And the whole idea is that how we can, integrate the hemp, potato cropping system. It's only focused on potato, I have no too much detail. I'm kind of started in a little late on the program, but like, there is like a funded. And definitely, I think like, I was thinking about like, Ontario station that like, where I think CleanSock was a director previous, now a new director there. I think that would be the one way to connect that. And then that could be the one way, like what's going on that. So these are the things from my side, and I'm really excited to see that Idaho also now joining in the hemp. So it's been like sometimes challenging, sometimes grant writing from Western, like Western region. Idaho is not there, so it's kind of it's good for everyone. So we are kind of increasing our like program across the Western region, and that's good. And I'm happy to be be in a good conversation here. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll get, I mean, it sounds like they're not currently talking too much. And when I say they, I mean OSU and U of I. So we're going to change that. And I'm glad to see so many people from U of I on the call, because I did check in with a variety of researchers from across the country. And really across the board, there was agreement that basic agronomy, variety testing, those two are the main buckets that we're just really getting a handle on. So, and that really affects what growers experience is the first time they grow it. Because if they end up getting a variety that they're, they can't really predict, that can be pretty damning. I was talking to a grower just yesterday who was growing for grain and fiber, and he is just across the border, so same growing region, irrigated ag, and he has been growing for the last 3 years with IMB hemp seed and a good relationship there, but he's actually planning not to grow next year. He has bales that he can't get rid of, and it doesn't make sense for him to ship them to Montana. So, there's just a lot, there's the good stories too. And that particular grower did really enjoy growing hemp. But there were a couple of things, like he didn't really like running it through his combine, and he was having a hard time with too tall of stands. It just wasn't drying down either. So yeah. On the other end, I did hear from a grain fiber grower here in Idaho who had a lot of success, is well positioned, especially for grain, since he owns a mill. But he's not planning to ramp up production too much next year. He's still planning to keep it, between 6 and 10 acres. And he's still, they tried a couple of different techniques, but he's planning to cut it and windrow it next year. So he thinks he has the fertility down and likes the kind that he's growing. I don't know if he's going to be experimenting with others yet. But yeah, just like basic production questions. So I guess I'd throw that in there. Variety trials, agronomy, and then the specialized production required for, hopefully you have a market. So I don't know if that brought anything up for, especially the few growers that we have on the call today. I would love to hear how your season went, especially if you want to flag anything for further attention.
Well, my story is a little bit similar to what you just told, Christina. Can you hear me okay?
Loud and clear.
My name's Blue Fortner. I farmed hemp back in 2019 with Clint Schock, who is the retiring director of OSU, who some of you might have worked with potato varieties on. He works with University of Idaho too. We had a real successful year growing 2.5 acre fields that we were then unable to sell any of the product from that I'm still sitting on. It was CBD flower, cannabinoid flower, and there's no processing in our area. I've had offers to take it to Montana, Alabama. It's really cost prohibitive to move that much material. And so the lack of processing in our area made it where we had a successful crop that then turned unsuccessful as it sits in storage still to this day. One thing that Clint and I developed together that we threw the 2020 Treasure Valley Hemp Conference to get the growers and the processors in the area and the region into an open communication channel with classes for both agriculture and hemp for human health. And we were shut down for 2 years from COVID. So 2023 will be our second annual Treasure Valley Hemp Conference. We're going to be trying to get educators from OSU, the Oregon Department of Ag, and then this kind of inspired me to reach out to the Idaho Department of Ag and the University of Idaho to be getting not only the right answers to the questions, but the right questions asked in general for us all to be successful in this industry. I didn't grow any more hemp in 2020 or 2021 or this year, but my crop in 2019, was both a massive success and a massive failure, both.
Thanks, Blue. I think we may have lost Marcy Siemens, who's a grower in Jerome. Would have loved, maybe she'll be able to rejoin us. But yeah, I think it's really curious. There's so many little bits of information. Oh, are you here?
Yes,
Oh,
sorry, I am not Zoom proficient, so I was trying to get everything to work.
I'm so glad that you're able to join us. And if you're comfortable, would love to hear how your season went.
Okay, I'll tell you a little bit of what I know. It was my husband mostly did it, and I'm just the one sitting on the call taking lots of notes for him since he's not here. But we just did, I think there were 2 half-acre plots, and we did do grain, and we took it through the combine. We did learn that if you tried to do it in the morning, it seemed like it was not, I wouldn't say wrapping necessarily, but it wasn't as easy. If we waited till about 1 in the afternoon when it was like dry, no dew, it did go through a lot easier. The biggest thing, I guess, with us, this being our first year and the first year for Idaho in general, is the licensing. We got the licensing okay, but like the testing had to be done within 30 days. We didn't know about that. And just, they had some problems with the USDA office that they kept calling and asking us, telling us it wasn't our fault. There was just not enough communication to make everything, it was kind of a pain. We did it, but it was kind of a pain. And we get that there's growing pains, but it's definitely a learning curve. And we thought that we would bale it after we took the grain off, but we ended up, we didn't bale it because it wasn't even enough in a windrow, even though it was taller than us. We also worked with IND Hemp, and they were super helpful at first, but it was a different sort of help because we're irrigated and they are not. My husband is actually a certified crop consultant, and he's super interested in this, but just the way they plant dry land versus us, we felt like the ground was wasted because the seed spacing was so far apart when we could have like really hammered stuff in there and got like a full, but it's just learning the things that we don't know. And the biggest thing was we put it on a little chunk of land that we had that was right on the highway. And we always, I mean, the sheriff kept telling us how many people were calling us in. There was people stopping, there's people trying to get out in it. And I think people just don't realize that there's other uses for it besides marijuana and being illegal.
It would be great because I've gotten some feedback around the testing, and really ISDA has been really great sending out updates about our project, and they participated in the first stakeholder meeting, and they're very open to feedback. So if any of you have feedback, I'm going to send them this recording. I think it's a good channel. And yeah, just thinking of it as and this is not the only channel, please reach out to them individually, but I think it's great that they're so open to feedback, and they've told me many times. But yeah, some rural growers that didn't grow it this year, but that are interested in growing it in the future, they have a lot of questions. Like I know, Pamela, you had to pay for an inspector to travel to northern Idaho and pay for their accommodations. And so, you know, that goes into the economic analysis that any grower is going to do. So is there the potential to bring more inspectors on in different parts of the region, maybe partnering with Extension or NRCS or soil water conservation districts if ISDA doesn't have staff on the ground, but just a way to like bring those cost figures down to try and you know, make it more appealing to risk that first planting. So any other thoughts on feedback around that, how the licensing went? I know, Pamela, you also, so yeah, well, I can leave space to talk too, but just pointing out some interesting things. So
let me just
Yeah.
add to, yes, we had to pay for travel expenses and inspection to go all the way up to Moscow because our researcher up there, we didn't have her on the license. But Greg Blahato, I don't know how to pronounce his last name. He was really helpful, and he said that it would be better to upfront put a lot of lots in your license application, and then during the summer you can pull those back, you know, if you don't use them. So it's better to license more than less, because that's what happened to us. We just thought, oh, one lot, then it ended up being 2 here and then like 3 up on campus, just with a few plants each time. So I thought that was interesting what he said there.
Yes.
And our definition of what a lot is, we always one seed source. Well, multiple planting timings are a lot. So anyways, it's just something that it's part of the learning curve.
Yeah.
Christina, if it's all right, I could sort of address some of the concerns or questions that it's kind of, or the problems that's you guys have had already.
yes, please do, Jeff.
Sure. So again, we've been doing this for some time in Canada, like a small experimental plot for us on the grain side of things. Each individual seed lot or grain lot is got that grower's number on it. So there's very little processing that's done at the end of the day on hemp. So basically the farmer grows the crop. He takes it to a cleaner that, in our case, there's companies that we have cleaning done. It's cleaned to 99.95% purity at that point. So that's a bit of a sticker shock for those growers that haven't had to clean to that degree. And the fact of the matter is, so from that seed cleaner, it goes into the processor. That processor will either, you know, smash it against a little steel plate and separate the hull from the hearts and then sell the hemp hearts, or they're going to run that through a cold press, again, keeping the heat down. So there's no real kill stop within that. And that's the point of the story, is that there's real no kill stop for hemp on the grain side of things. So the education starts at the grower, making sure that all the equipment's cleaned properly, bins are cleaned properly, handling of the grain. And then to make it worthwhile, there's the testing that's done. Obviously, the testing has to be done field level. The testing is then done for microbial level. As soon as the farmer sends in a sample, then the processor sends in a sample. Then there's a final test that also has the THC test done, and there's a certain limitation on parts per million. So that whole process is a learning curve. And again, you know, our first time growers, we like them to grow at least 80 acres because that gives enough at least for a semi truck or something. They're vested in it. It gives them a good experience, obviously. And the objective for me as the agronomist is to make sure that they get the right variety, and and taking a look at their operation and, you know, how best to handle that grain. How are you going to get it to a dry, safe, clean food standard? And as far as harvesting, we tend to harvest anywhere from 13 to even as high as 20% seed moisture. That way the pectin and lignin are still holding together the fibers within the stalk. You don't want to wait until it gets dry, otherwise you're going to have some wrapping issues that were kind of mentioned. In that case, you've got about 4 hours really to get, you know, if it's at 16-17% moisture, you've got about 4 hours to get it on some sort of air to reduce the microbial load. So, I mean, I can kind of go on for for quite some time on the details of how to grow, and I'd be happy. I think, Blue, you mentioned if anybody would like to speak at it, I'd be more than happy. I'm on the HIA. They have a new committee called the Grain and Seed Committee. So I chair that committee. I'm on the variety testing committee for the Canadian Hemp Trade Alliance. I'm a director there, and on the minor use. So I have an idea on what herbicides, the IR4 project, what they're working with. And again, research is my background, that's my blood. So anybody that's interested in conversing, Marguerite, I've chatted with her before, and we do some work with Purdue. Happy to help out and provide genetics where they're suited. And any advice, again, we want the industry to flourish both sides of the border. I might not tell you, I'm involved with a food processing company, and I probably won't tell you the secrets on how we clean to a certain standard or have some certain IP there that we like to keep to ourselves. But as far as the agronomy and working with producers, if we can save some skin from their knuckles, then it's worth our while. And I mean, the grain industry, I still think, like, fiber industry is one thing, and you're talking, I know, IND hemp. You can ship grain a large or across a vast space, you know, for 2 cents a pound, 3 cents a pound. We ship from southern Alberta to Manitoba all the time. But when you're talking about either biomass, if the market isn't there, of course, or if fiber, you're shipping a lot of air, so it's very difficult. You need to be within that range of that processor. So if the processing isn't in your state, you know, I would suggest that you take a look at grain, because I know that even the Canadian grain companies are looking for growers in the US right now. Again, I mentioned the high commodity prices throughout. We've gone from, you know, at planting time this year, we had regularly canolas based at about $8 a bushel. It was up to $24 a bushel. So it was very difficult to get those growers to step out of their comfort zone and grow a crop that they weren't maybe quite used to. And it's absolutely right. It was mentioned, you know, there are some certain things about the crop. If you don't have a home for the fiber, how do you get rid of that fiber? And as an agronomist and also a CCA, I bite my tongue, but I have to burn that stubble occasionally to make sure that I can get a crop planted the next year. Rotation with potatoes was mentioned too. We've got a growing area in Manitoba here that's actually the largest potato producing we are the largest potato producing province in Manitoba. As long as PEI is kind of well known for it, Manitoba does have, and so we do have that in the rotation. No issues with the taproot issue. I would suggest you probably want to plant hemp after potatoes and take use of that extra nutrients. Hemp is a hungry crop, needs a lot of nutrients, likes that nitrogen. So I've kind of blabbed there for a little while, but just to give you an idea of what I think I can offer to everybody here. And I mean, it's not like I'm looking for more work, but I'm looking for moving the industry forward. And however we can do that and support that, that's what we're here for. So
I'll go ahead and, oh, Javindra, go ahead and chime in. I can go after you.
Jeff, I was, I missed some conversation. I was in another phone call. You guys are only focused on grain, is that right? Grain and fiber? Or
no, we have been, but and that's just because that's how the industry's gone so far, Govinda. You know, for the last 20 years, it's been the grain industry that's moved the industry in Canada. But as of late, we've got more fiber processing plants, particularly in Alberta. There's 4 that have surfaced just this last year alone. So our genetics are moving towards that also. So we're a little behind. By 2024, we'll have a good source of you know, our own high fiber varieties, fiber only varieties. The other interesting thing that we're doing is looking at hybrid production in hemp. And by 2024, we expect to roll out, actually, we do have our first F1 hybrid, true F1 grain hybrid, T3H 2006, that I'd like to actually trial in Idaho, in Oregon. It is more suited to the southern latitudes. It's a later maturing. It does not mature very well in Manitoba here. So that's one that I look for. But we're very encouraged with the parenting and the lines that we had in our nursery this year, where we're going to be taking that to, I guess, full production as far as a hybrid crop. So with that becomes uniformity, which if you've grown hemp, you realize that the most uniform thing about hemp is that it's non-uniform, that it's growing all over the place. And so early season vigor, seeding and harvesting are the two, you know, those are the hardest work on hemp. Getting it established, weed control, and then harvest management are the two. And like I said, I've got quite a few years of practical experience, both on the research side and on the farming side. So happy to share that information with those that feel they could utilize it.
Is that a hybrid when you say, is that a grain and fiber, or is that?
No, what I mean by hybrid is 2 distinct parents, kind of like hybrid corn. So I would say like the grain and fiber, we call that dual purpose. But the first hybrid line or variety that we will have available will likely fit that dual purpose. And so we've identified that what we want to do is double the grain yield on dryland conditions. So in Canada, you're looking at anywhere from 800 to 1,000 pounds is sort of the average grain production yield. We want to get that to 2,000, 2,500 to 3,000 on dry land. That's attainable by irrigated land with the right nutrients. You can get 2,500 to 3,000 pounds of grain under irrigation. But what we're looking at when the hybrid production is again having that a lower population. It's a dioecious crop, but having maybe a 3% population of males as opposed to 50% or 40%. So those are the things we're working towards, and I was very encouraged by our nursery this year that we're on the right track now. Just cross our fingers and hope Mother Nature doesn't kick us in the butt, as she can. So
that's a good, I just want to let you know that I'm located at Southern Oregon. We are more focused on cannabinoid and flower, so we don't need meal. That's what I'm not too much interested, like grain and fiber, because the grower will kill me that if I said that I want to do some trial on grain and fiber, it doesn't work the way where I'm located. But I'm interested on autoflower. I don't know, because in Southern Oregon it's kind of more on a drought. The autoflower has a very short, you can harvest so quickly, and you can, even you can utilize the spring rain, and then you can get a good harvest in a way that it's sort of like a dry farming, but like you're utilizing the different types of the like autoflower. So are you aware of that, like you guys do that on that line?
Yeah, we're aware of autoflower for sure, and once we perfect, or at least get close to being extremely comfortable with the hybrid production, we can introduce traits. It's not GMO, but we can introduce traits from certain cultivars much easier that way. And that is a goal of ours, because again, our varieties, for the most part, are suited for Western Canada, and the higher latitudes, as maybe all of Idaho, we would have a variety specific for. When I grow a crop, say a variety of ours called CRS1, when I grow it on my farm, it grows 8 to 10 feet tall, which is not a happy place as a grain variety. That's just a little too tall. We take that down to Kentucky and we get to 4 to 5 feet tall. So that's what the latitude can do. And so it's important to make sure that the variety you're growing is suited for your area in doing so too, and suited to your operation. So if it's just grain that you want to do with, maybe make a little extra money on fiber, I think you try to concentrate on one of the 3 industry revenue streams, and do a really good job at that, and then see if you can add extra income off the side. But this is just my opinion.
That's great, Jeff. I really enjoyed, please, if anyone has interest on autoflower, I'm very keen to, investigate my time on that, because I personally believe that it has a huge market,
Yeah.
in the future. So far, there are like very few variety, and these are not doing well as well, because, genetic stability is required on autoflower. So yeah, it's a good conversation. Thank you, Jeff.
You're welcome. So yeah, my usual, I guess if somebody wants me to speak at an event, it's usually about 35, 40 minutes of a presentation, going right from seeding through weed control, variety selection, into harvest, how to handle it, whether it's aeration, dryers, what the temperature, combine settings, all of that is included. And that's, again, just trying to help the industry move forward, and not have farmers get as frustrated as I have. My joke is that I used to have a hairdo like Elvis Presley before I started hemp. And then in 1998, it started to reverse, but it's all good.
Thank you, Jeff. And I will go ahead and just take you up on that offer. I know we've talked about it before, and Blue, it would be good for us to connect, because we do have some funding that we could use to actually bring Jeff down here. And then hopefully as many of us as are able, once that date is set, can plan to be there. Very interested in continuing that conversation if you're interested.
Yeah, I don't have a speaking fee, but if some of the expenses can be looked after, that's a big part of it. So.
I think we can do that for you.
Perfect. Yeah.
That's really amazing, because I was trying to figure out how to get him through on a Zoom presentation up on a screen like this to help keep costs lower on my end of things. But
I've done that too, Blue.
Application, and same with you, Christina. It seems like you have enough information that you'd be able to present at an event like we're talking about.
Yeah, let's plan on that. I'll have Blue, once that date is set, I'll have Blue share that with me, and I can communicate it out to everyone.
It'll be Saturday, February 18th.
I've
already been to the 4 Rivers Cultural Center here in Ontario. So we've got a venue. We've got a lot of experience putting on the conference. We've got trade vendors, trade show, and the human health conference side will be separate from the ag side, in 2 different rooms going at the same time.
And I went to the first one and I thought it was great. And you said February 18th, and that's
Yes.
it all day in Ontario.
Not Ontario, Canada. Province of Ontario.
Sorry, Jeff.
And then just on the research side of things, if you're looking for projects, that, as I mentioned, as plant, establishment is huge. Whether there's seed treatments that we can use, seeding date is a really important one. You can have a lot of effect on your disease, etc., just by seeding date. What other one? That's kind of what the next part of where I was after. And then split applications. It's a heavy nitrogen user. Do we split apply nitrogen to make a better use efficiency. There's all these, I've got a lot of different ideas that I kind of left behind when I left my research job. There's obviously lots to do yet with this crop, but a seeding date, a variety trial tells you a lot, gives you a lot of information. So those would be the ones that I would recommend. So.
Well, we have about 30 minutes left. I'll continue and just remind everyone, and feel free to chime in if you have any questions for Jeff or anyone else, or if you have any other things to share, especially things that could benefit from some more thought or coordination, you know, any question at all, don't be shy.
Is there any other questions that people are finding really common within this industry that you'd like to see addressed at the conference, besides the licensing, the testing, and the basic production requirements, which I've gotten written down from our conversation so far?
Just from my perspective too, Blue, I think the biggest thing is the processing. Where do I sell my product? So that, you know, that should be the number one thing growers do, is try to find a home for it. And again, I can speak to, I am associated with one processing entity in Canada, but we do sell our seed to, you know, 3 of the 4 of the major ones. And I know all of them are kind of looking for new growers, both sides of the border, really. So there are opportunities there until the processing kind of gets up and going in the US. It seems to be the last thing. I mean, CBD was first, fiber. Now, to me, again, I still think that's the longevity of this crop. There's always going to be revenue streams on the other two, but I think if we can promote and make consumers aware of the nutritional value of the seed and what it does as far as human nutrition, if we can get this animal feed pushed through too. So there's a few things to work on. The other one that I guess I'm a strong proponent for in Canada, because you've talked about regulations a little bit, is the use of certified seed. For us, that's really kind of taking the pressure off of farmers taking their THC testing. That farmers no longer have to take a THC test here. We do that all on the pedigree level. So I'm a pedigree grower. So if we grow a breeder plot, it's our responsibility to get that tested and sent into Health Canada. If it's registered, certified, Foundation Select, any of those for seed and multiplication, that's where the testing gets done. Once it gets delivered to the farmer for a certified seed for processing after, then there's no longer a need for that. So, you know,
on that note, Jeff, I want you to finish your thought after, but there is some of that work happening in the US, and USDA is identifying varieties that consistently test below the threshold that can be certified. So removing that testing requirement.
Yeah. What I call our legacy varieties, you know, they just don't go hot. Our C varieties, CRS1, CFX2, they're true industrial hemp varieties, cultivars that are strong grain yielders that just don't go hot. When we look at some of the fiber varieties, depending on what their origin, whether it's Asia or most of the stuff, I guess, coming out of Eastern Europe tends to be, again, focused on low levels of THC, where it's not the case perhaps on some Asian varieties and stuff. So it's just that's a very broad statement, but that's kind of what I've seen in the past. So we do deal in CBD varieties, but they come from the US, so we tend not to sell them in the US because there's still a little more margin in Canada just for selling seed there. So.
Well, I scheduled. Oh yes, go ahead, Marcy.
I just had a question for him. I have a million thoughts going through my head, but one of the because we also have here in the Magic Valley, I mean, there's lots of people that want to try hemp and that were watching what we were doing, but the can't think of the word, but the price per acre they're getting on the spuds for rent or the beets, the competition for that acre is so strong. We've got to make sure that the hemp can beat that out pretty much if anybody's going to even do it. So my question with that is that something that we had thought of is we had planted in, I think it was either the end of April or first part of May, and it didn't come up at like all, just very short. But then once it hit like the middle of June, it just took off.
Yep.
And we were wondering if someone has experience with this, if you could double crop that, if you could do like a winter barley, pull it off and then plant and still have it harvest and mature out to make that competition per acre have a double crop.
You can probably do that. I can't. We don't have quite the length. So again, hemp is photoperiod sensitive, meaning that it reacts more to day length than heat units or anything else. And so what you're going to find though is that you want to probably grow a little bit taller variety, because it's not going to get that tall because you're on a declining, you're on the other side of the summer solstice, right? The days are getting shorter. It's going to trigger it to flower earlier. So you're not going to get the height, and you won't get the same yield either. That's what I meant by that seeding date, to find that sweet spot. So seeding too early, doesn't like cold, wet soils, likes the soil to be in that, 53, 54 to 55 degree Fahrenheit range. So that's where you can get away with seeding a little bit later, but I don't like seeding too late either, because then, just depends again on your rain. So like soybeans, it likes that rain also, during just after flowering as it's setting seed. So as long as you've got the moisture working for you there too, Marcy, then that helps too, right? But it's a very good question, and it's definitely worth doing a trial or two on, because I think that there is that opportunity there. We have the same problem. So as an agronomist too, I'm sort of touting the advantages of having hemp in the rotation. We've seen on our own farm, since we've been growing it regularly, that yields have been increasing. The taproot system, it's just, everything is, the normal sequence of growing wheat and canola is broken up, right? So it's just, you're kind of throwing Mother Nature a wrench in this case. And so we've found that our other crops are increasing in yield also. And I can't speak to potatoes, but certainly the other cereals and stuff we find, and there's a certain, we gotta fine tune that also, as far as what the best previous crop that I've had, and this is what we did this year, is seeded faba beans actually. They're kind of making a little comeback now, but having that residual nitrogen, not to be boastful, but I was able to take off 1,900 pounds of our variety, which is the second best yield I've had. The only other yield that was better was on hog manure. So that organic nitrogen nutrients is important, and then the moisture, of course. So yeah, the more and more we do this, of course, the data is collected and we can pass that on. But those are some of the things that you listen to. And again, I'm not going to come down to Idaho and tell you how to farm in Idaho. I'll tell you, what our experiences in Canada, and then how does that affect, you guys, right? So, and same as what Marguerite said, I presented at a Wisconsin event, and said that, I've never seen a crop decimated by botrytis or sclerotinia. And as soon as I said that, I got off the stage and somebody from Wisconsin said, well, take a look at this, so that's what I mean. You don't ever say never. We just, on our prairies, we just don't have that high humidity and that pressure, disease pressure, but it's not to say that you can't. So.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah. Bit of a long answer for you. So I do have another call in 10 minutes here that I have to attend to. So I'll leave you, but I did leave my email in the chat, I believe. So if anybody wants to reach out, feel free to. And it's a pleasure getting to see some smiling hemp faces, and yeah, kudos to you and for coming aboard, and anything we can do up here in Canada to help you out, more than willing to help out.
Thanks for taking the time, Jeff. We'll definitely be in touch.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
Well, cool. I have lots of little fun things that I could just bring up and see if it it brings any more questions up or comments from this first season, or for those of you who've been doing it for a little while. One, I know when I was talking with Marguerite, she had just presented at their state fair, and they had the Purdue culinary students make a bunch of mini muffins with hemp hearts in them. And there were people who didn't want to eat them, who were concerned or lacked the information to make them feel confident in eating a hemp product. So that's definitely something that I think is going to need some attention here in Idaho, especially on the grain front. So something to be thinking of. And I think it's just a unique challenge that can be fun. Consumer education is tricky, but necessary, and got to make it fun and tasty. So that's something I wanted to flag for anyone thinking in that direction. Also, Donald Wizaki, who's at the Hermiston OSU Research Center on irrigated acreage, did do some nitrogen studies. So just in case anyone is curious, they found that there was a plant response where zero nitrogen was half the height, 50 pounds per acre was shorter, and then anything above 100 pounds per acre was basically the same. And so that was non-organic nitrogen, and I've yet to connect with anyone that has done comparable studies using like a manure, but I think it would be relatively easy to ascertain the amounts, if depending on what source of nitrogen you were using. Yeah, and then there's been a lot around varieties today. So I'll be really curious to see if we have an increase in varieties grown next season. I'm also very curious to see if we have a reduction in acreage, because that tends to be, based on the states that I've looked into, a trend. After the first year, it usually dips. And we had, 13 growers registered last year. So I'm curious to see if we increase or decrease, and then looking at the acreage. There's also a lot going on in the Midwest, and it might be for anyone particularly interested in varieties. There's a Midwest varieties database. So not exactly our growing climate, but they have data on a lot of different varieties. If anyone really wants to nerd out there. Another thing to note, I'm maybe just to emphasize, I think what Jeff said about grain is really interesting. And so grain being cheaper to ship, fiber, you're shipping a lot of air. It's best if it's really close, if the processing is close to you. And then if you're looking at cannabinoid production at scale, that's specialized processing with biomass as well. But I'm curious, especially for the grower in the room. And I'm just opening this up as a question for the group. How feasible, because I know Jeff's like, yes, Canada wants growers, but how feasible do you think it will be for Idaho growers, or even Treasure Valley growers, Great Basin, Snake River Valley growers, to gain access into that Canadian market with our existing infrastructure? Does that seem like it would be doable to folks on the call? You imagine it, like, it would have to be semi, right? It's not going to go by rail.
So if someone else wants to talk, go ahead, but my husband and I have just been talking about this because we just did a very small scale and we just collected it. I was walking by the combine with there was a huge bucket, making sure it was going in the bucket. So we just had about, I don't know, like an 8x10 tarp worth that was just heaped with the hemp. And we found that, I think it was 2 or 3 days after we went in there, it was in the shop, it was all controlled, whatever, and it was already starting to mold. So we had talked, if we had to do it, we have grain bins like crazy for our other grain crops, but for the hemp, you definitely have to have one with the air, and it would have to be there fast so that it didn't go bad.
Yeah, you said within 4 hours, if you're
Yes.
harvesting at 16% seed moisture, you have 4
Yes,
hours.
so that, I mean, we're a lot farther than that from Canada. So you'd have to have everything completely dried down. There'd have to be some other processing facility closer to get it dried down enough before it could be shipped that far.
So we're thinking like a intermediary processing.
That's what we were thinking. We don't know. That's just our thoughts of what we experienced.
It'd be good to get Jeff's thoughts on this too. I mean, in Idaho, we do have Thousand Springs Mill and the Corney brothers, and they're experimenting with grain from the producer and the handler perspective. And I think it's a nice way for growers in this area to test the waters and have a market. But I think there's still a lot, even questions for them. And Tim couldn't make it today, unfortunately. He regretted not being able to make it. He's just super busy. But yeah, it'll be curious because they have a product that they want to put hemp parts into, and they're reducing their acreage. And so that to me indicates that there's still a lot of ingenuity that will need to take to be deployed to figure this out. But it is also great because we have the grain, and there was some talk, I don't know, Marcy, if you have any more information on this, but I know Hempitecture, who have engaged in this work as well, they're looking at opening a processing plant. Or,
yes, they're actually just 5 miles from my house. That's how we kind of got started, and the whole thing was between them and I&D Hemp and shuffling stuff backwards, so there was no dead hauls.
That's great. So we have some good local markets that are growing. And on our last call, and I'll have to follow up with them, there was a person in Ontario interested in building material as well. And he was looking at like field desiccated, like hydraulically pressed industrial building materials. So I'll have to follow up with him to see if that's something that's still getting off the ground. And then with cannabinoids, you know, in my mind, one of the videos that Laura put in the chat earlier in the call was from a producer in Central Oregon, growing 50 acres on a pivot. And they have a contract with a beverage company. And so they bale it and then ship it by semi-regionally. So, you know, there are some interesting contracts that I think growers can pursue as well. Yeah, just thank you all for being here today. I don't know if there's any final thoughts that people want to share. I'm just excited that there's people that want to talk about hemp as much as I do. So yeah, thanks again for prioritizing hemp industry connection today, for sharing your stories, questions. It's been a good time. Since NCAP is a nonprofit that relies on supporters to keep the lights on, Laura is going to drop a link in the chat in case you want to support our work on hemp or to help advance least toxic alternatives to chemistries like paraquat, which is still regulated, sold, and used in the US despite clear links to Parkinson's. in the coming week, we will share the recording of this meeting, which we encourage you to share with anyone you think might enjoy listening to our discussion today. And as a reminder, there will be a report of industry findings released next fall at the conclusion of this project. So please reach out to me if you have any research questions, challenges you'd like us to focus on, or opportunities you'd like to highlight. Don't hesitate to reach out. And I look forward to continuing discussion with you all.